I'm going to tell you a story, and it's going to involve a video game, and how that one video game can bring people together and complicate their lives. Oh, and maybe a hint of recursion. Welcome to All Your Lives Belong to Us, an Aurora Wasteland story by VaughnAshby. Episode 4, Aurora.
257.
Hey. The phone buzzed in Aurora's pocket as she put the truck in a park. It had been buzzing the whole drive, but she had ignored it. She didn't do it because she was big on the whole distracted driver thing, though she supported it, while often ignoring it. No, she purposefully ignored it because she knew exactly who it was, and she wasn't in the mood to take that particular call at the moment. Though, to be fair, she wasn't in the mood to do much today. The large sign with the word hospital displayed it in big, bold, glowing letters stared back at her through the truck's window. She wasn't sure which she wanted to do less, answer her cell or step into the hospital. But one she had to do, she was getting paid for it. The rumble of the truck ceased as she turned the key and pulled them from the ignition. She checked her watch and took one last sip of coffee, then climbed out of the truck. She hated driving the stupidly large thing, but like most things in her life, it was carefully selected for a purpose. Much like her clothes and hairstyle, it was all tailored to the outcome she desired. Things didn't just happen to Aurora. Luck wasn't a thing. Research and planning can put you in the correct situation to get what you want every time. At least it did for her. Likely, being an attractive woman helped. Who didn't love a great rack? Aurora knew this and put it to work for her. And why shouldn't she? Straight white men had been doing it long enough. Why couldn't everyone else? The magic no-touching hospital doors opened as she approached them. The smell of the hospital rushed out to greet her. There were few things in life she hated more than that smell. It brought back so many memories she never wanted to remember, but every time she stepped foot in a hospital, it all came rushing back. And as much as she tried to not come back to places like this, she always did. Her job demanded it. Hospitals hold a lot of old people, and old people hold a lot of information about weird shit. They've been around long enough to have encountered the strange and weird, which is what kept dragging Aurora back here. She passed the front admission desk and glanced at her phone for the room number she was given. A phone call interrupted her search, and she almost accidentally answered it, but luckily she didn't and found the room number 815. The nurse at the front desk said nothing as she passed by. Aurora had learned a long time ago that social engineering was a big part of her job, and that if you act like you belong somewhere, no one will ask you to stop and ask you questions. Most hospitals are mazes, built piece by piece, with little to no planning for the future. At least that was Aurora's experience. But the more mazes you're in, the more you start to recognize the patterns. She had to find room 815, which normally would have meant the 8th floor, but this hospital only had 3, so that likely meant that it was in the 8th ward, which, based on the size of the hospital, likely put it in the newer area. Hospitals were rarely updated once they were completed, so following the aesthetic, she worked her way from terrible brown tile to gray, used to be white tile, to newish gray tile, and a sign that read Ward 8. The ward was laid out in a circle with a nurse's station in the middle. Room 815 was first on the right, 820 was on her left. Aurora went left and soon found herself standing in front of room 815. She took a deep breath and stepped into the room as her phone buzzed in her pocket. A young woman sat at the side of a bed that an older gentleman was occupying. His eyes were closed, likely hadn't been open in a while. The blonde woman tapped away on her laptop. She looked engrossed in something. Aurora said nothing, grabbed the other chair in the room, and placed it next to the woman, then sat down. "Both my parents died in a hospital like this," Aurora said, startling the woman. "Same hospital, different times. Once you lose anyone in a hospital, you start to see them differently for what they are. They change you, and your view on life. When you're a kid, a hospital is where you go to get better. And that's not wrong for some, but for others, the older you are, the more likely you aren't stepping out of it." The blonde woman slid her laptop down and stared at Aurora. She opened her mouth to speak, but the purposefully left open button-down shirt caught the woman's eye, just as Aurora had hoped and planned. A great rack really was a useful asset. "There's something about the smell. It drags me back to memories that I wish I could delete. Memories that aren't fair to a kid. I was only a teenager when they both died, old enough to really have it mess me up. Do you know what that smell is? And why, once you smell it, you can't forget it?" The blonde woman shook her head, and Aurora watched the woman's eyes linger on her bright pink lips, a color that had been carefully selected. "It's death. Nothing in this world smells like it. It's unforgettable." You sure it's not a cleaning solution? The blonde woman said, which caused Aurora to laugh. They probably all get their supplies from the same vendor. Wouldn't that be something? If all this time I'd been confusing death with a cleaning solution, Aurora said as she smiled at the blonde woman. Who are you? The woman asked as she closed her laptop and placed it on the floor next to the chair. If you're from the hospital, Aurora smiled and laughed again. Listen, Maggie, How did you know my name? Do you remember the last expansion to Elysium? The one that got you hooked on the game? Did work send you here, Mun? Was this Mun? Did she tell you what happened? Because you know the Aurora Wasteland is real, right? What, the game expansion? No, the actual place. You're in it now. What's the phrase? Aurora paused as if she couldn't fully remember the sentence, but she could. It was for effect. Everything was for a reason. A place where the strange and weird thrive. What do you mean, I'm in it now? Maggie said, a concerned look on her face. My parents were Aurora Wasteland investigators when I was young. I was too young to tag along, but that didn't stop them from talking about it, sharing what they know, and passing the knowledge they'd acquired onto their daughter. They taught me what to look for, that the world wasn't what I expected it to be. There's a layer that most people ignore. You are in that layer, Maggie. I know what happened at work and at your house. That doesn't happen to people who aren't in the layer. You're in it, the Aurora Wasteland, and unfortunately there isn't a way out. Except with my help. How? How could you help me? I took what my parents had passed on to me, I monetized the knowledge they gave, and created a way to help people with it. I'm a contractor. The Aurora Wasteland website brings me in when they feel someone needs special help. You are special. Melting boyfriends count as special, Aurora said as she placed her hand on Maggie's arm. Maggie laughed and bit her lip. Exactly the response Aurora was hoping for. She smiled back at her, then felt the all-too-familiar buzz in her pocket. It rattled against the hospital chair, pulling Maggie from the connection. Aurora pulled it from her pocket and hit ignore for the call. The phone went silent. Sorry, Aurora said as she adjusted herself in the chair. Was it a rule that all hospital chairs had to be uncomfortable? I broke up with my girlfriend this morning. Well, technically she broke up with me, and now she thinks Sorry, way too much sharing. It's okay, Maggie said as she placed her hand on Aurora's arm now. My grandpa is good at listening. She motioned to the man in the bed, indicating that he was her grandpa. But Aurora knew that already. Well, we break up a lot. That's the total opposite of me and my... Maggie trailed off. It was obvious she still hadn't come to grips with her situation change with her boyfriend. Well, It's okay, Aurora said. She gave Maggie her best sympathetic half smile and half supportive eyes. Who are you? Maggie asked as she leaned in closer to Aurora. You're going to laugh. My parents named me Aurora, for obvious reasons. Maggie tried to hold back a giggle. Aurora? You work for the Aurora Wasteland as a consultant? Contractor. There's a big difference there. I'm just here to help. The only thing I can't figure out is why. Why what? Why you? Oh, Maggie said as she reached down for her laptop. I can show you. I got a message from this guy named Nick that said... Maggie trailed off as something caught her attention. A woman stood in the doorway. Hey, Megs. We were worried about you at the office, so I came to check on you. Maggie stumbled to her feet, dropping her laptop. How did you... You must be Aurora, the woman said as she put her hand out for Aurora to shake and approach them. Aurora tucked her phone into her pocket, got up, adjusted her top, and took the woman's hand. You must be Mun, Maggie's boss. She must have told you so much about me. Aurora laughed. No, she hadn't mentioned you at all. Oh, Mun said, a hint of disappointment in her tone. Well, I need her to come with me. Work stuff, you understand. Aurora smiled and squeezed Mun's hand. Oh, I do completely, Aurora laughed as she placed her free hand, which wasn't shaking Mun's hand, on top of her wrist, tapped her watch face with her finger, and smiled again. Mun stared down at their hands. Aurora's watch face glowed blue. Mun tried to pull her hand away, but couldn't. Aurora squeezed harder. Mun dropped to the floor, holding her stomach. Maggie inched towards them. What did you do? Mun made no noise. She only stared up at the two women. We should get out of here, Aurora said as she took Maggie's hand and pulled her over Mun. You know the whole melting black tar bit she and her kind do? Well, I just activated it, and it's going to be unpleasant to see. What do you mean? Maggie said as she glanced back at Mun. Her insides are turning to tar. They are going to explode out of her in the most efficient way possible. Her butt. Sounds gross. Wait, Maggie said as she tugged at Aurora to stop. I need my laptop. And what about my grandpa? Aurora raised her other hand, the one that wasn't pulling Maggie along, and flashed Maggie her laptop. Don't worry about Grandpa. He'll get a great sponge bath after. The tar is harmless. Mostly. There was a scream from the hospital room from Mun. Then a long, releasing grunt. Both Maggie and Mun giggled. Their eyes met, and for a brief second Aurora thought Maggie was going to kiss her. So she did the only thing you could do with the sweet sounds of someone shitting themselves to death in the other room. Aurora leaned in and kissed Maggie.
257. 257.
B. As Nick tumbled down, he had a strange sensation of accomplishment. This had to have been Lemon's plan. There were too many coincidences for it to not be, and he'd figured it out. He'd rarely prided himself on his intellectual prowess, but by his own accords he had classified himself as below par for intellect. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe he just needed to find the right kind of puzzle. Or, and more likely, he was just good at following the steps Lemon had laid out for him. Really, what did he have to do? Find a couple X's? Still, he was happy with his progress. Anything has to be better than sitting in the hotel room and dying over and over again. The dark tunnel quickly gave way to light, and Nick crashed into and through a table. Pieces of wood splintered around him. The metal frame of the table bent under him. All the air and urine in Nick's body escaped at an alarming rate. Then there was that building pain. Most of it came from everywhere, but there seemed to be an alarming amount coming from his right arm. He rolled off the table, sat up best he could, and looked at his arm. He supported his right hand with his left. A bump protruded downward. Seemed awfully fast for a goose egg of that size. He inched his left hand over and poked the bump, which caused him to scream in agony. Nope, not a bump. Definitely bone. He broke his arm in the fall. It looked like both bones, just a little higher than his wrist. He poked at it again. Again he yelled. This time tears welled up in his eyes. Yep, definitely broken. He inched the left hand down over the bump and lifted his two broken bones back into place. He screamed for a third time, then collapsed back onto the table. Was him breaking his arm in Lemon's plan? Or had he just fucked it up? Hello? A voice called out. You okay over there? Nick didn't know if he should beg for help or just keep quiet and hope that whoever it was didn't notice the change in the table. You in the table? Why'd you break my table? Nick grunted and rolled over to climb out of the object formerly known as a table. Sorry about the table, Nick said as he struggled to get to his feet holding his broken arm. Standing in front of him was a large, broad-shouldered man wearing a black suit, white shirt, and black tie, which seemed to be the uniform or something for everyone here. Only the man had an apron on that had a woman's body and a bikini printed on it. Nick had seen an ample amount of hotel chefs wear these before. They were always super classy, which is probably why Nick liked hanging out with them. The man stared at Nick. You okay? The man asked. Yeah, oh yeah, never better, Nick said as he tried to wave off that his arm was fine by waving with it. The pain was beyond words, and Nick yearned to have rather been kicked in the balls. Your arm seems pretty messed up. Would you like me to kill you? The man asked, in a way that was too deadpan for Nick. He'd never been asked that before. It was an odd request. While yes, killing him would hypothetically fix his arm, it would also send him back to his hotel room, and all Lemon had done to get him out would have been for nothing. Thanks for the offer, but I'm fine, really, Nick said as he took in the room he'd fallen into. It looked like a cafeteria. The middle of the room was filled with tables, similar to the one he'd fallen into, while the outside was lined with different restaurant order windows. That's sus, the man said as he inched closer to Nick. Sus? Suspicious. All the kids are saying it these days. They are? Yep, I read about it in the Learn to Be a Better Human newsletter. Did you not read the latest issue? I keep mine in the bathroom so that I have something to read during those big coiling poops, you know, in case I forget my phone. I just must not have got to it yet. The man stared at Nick. That is sus. You are sus. You know, I've heard tales of saboteurs going around and, well, saboteuring things. Really? Saboteuring things? Are you one? Nick laughed awkwardly. Do I look like one? Hey, can I ask you something? How does one get out of here? Why would you want to leave? This is very much sus. I'm going to kill you just to make sure, the man said as he stepped towards Nick and grabbed Nick's broken arm. The bones in Nick's arm vibrated with pain as they rubbed against each other. It was a feeling Nick had never thought he'd experience. He wanted to scream and cry, but it was all too much. So he did nothing. He didn't move. He said nothing. He just stared at the man who was holding his broken arm. The longer the man held it, the more Nick's brain started flickering to blank. His ability to think was gone, lost to everything coming from his arm. How would you like it? The man said as he pulled a chef's knife from his apron pocket. Would you like me to just cut your arm off and let you bleed? Or I could stab you in the chest. I know some like it in the manhood, but I'm not into that. Unless you are, because I could. The man stopped talking as his head exploded, thus leading to the release of Nick's arm. Before Nick's arms could relinquish its pain assault, another set of hands were on him. We need to go, a woman's voice said as she ushered him to his feet and over the body on the floor that used to belong to the man in the apron, but which was now melting away to blackness. No, Nick blurted out as he pulled himself free from the woman. Listen, I tried to save you before in your hotel room, but things got messy and I couldn't get you out. Lemon really wanted me to save you. She says you're important and... Did you say Lemon? Yeah, why? You know her? Lemon, that is, because I got this message on my console in my room and... Yeah, she's my co-op. Co-op? A man yelled to the woman as he burst through the dining hall and sprinted towards them.
257.
A. The bathroom mirror, through its many layers of crime, somehow still provided a reflection. Aurora stared at herself as she splashed some cold water over her face. Her phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. She reached over and silenced it. She knew exactly who it was and why she was calling. She learned a long time ago she didn't have to do things on other people's timetable. She'd answer it when she was ready, which wasn't right now. Aurora smiled at herself in the mirror. It felt incredibly fake, but she did it anyway. Then she adjusted her boobs and shirt for maximum cleavage, then smiled again. This time she tried hard to make the smile look less fake. Instead, it fell more in the creepy category. She exhaled, undid one more button on her button-down shirt, then let her smile fade. She knew that with the appropriate amount of cleavage showing, her smile would matter very little. As the bathroom door cracked open, the sounds and smells from the coffee shop drifted towards her. The location had been Aurora's idea. She'd used it before, and it had yielded the desired results. Maggie sat at a table near the window. 2 cups of coffee sat on the small table. As Aurora approached, she examined Maggie. She was an odd woman. She seemed so sure of herself, but completely lost in her lack of confidence in communicating with other people. She was fully on board with helping Nick, despite knowing almost nothing about him, though she was pretty certain it was the failed attempts to acquire what she knew about Nick that drew her further into all of this. "Thanks for the coffee," Aurora said as she sat down in the chair across from Maggie. "No worries. I mean, you saved me," and Maggie glanced at Aurora's cleavage. "Why did you kiss me?" Aurora smiled at her. She hoped better than in the bathroom. "I felt a connection." Maggie laughed awkwardly. "Okay, I thought it was just me. You're... What? You'd think it was stupid, but..." Maggie bit her lip. "You look so much like one of the characters from the Elysium video game. Your clothes, your hair, everything." "Really?" Aurora said as she leaned in and took a sip of her coffee. "Yeah, in fact, it's the character I play as." "Shit, that's weird. Did you have a crush on her?" "Maybe," Maggie said as she smiled again. The 2 women locked eyes and then laughed, an obvious connection growing between them. "So, you're from the Aurora Wasteland, like the video game expansion. Only you're real. Except you look like the character from the video game company I work for." "Well, yes, except I didn't know about the character thing." "Why are you here?" "I knew Lemon. What worked with her actually before the cancer and, the dying." She had cancer? I didn't know." "It's not public knowledge." "You knew her. She's kind of my idol in a way." "I did. We worked together on a few Aurora Wasteland cases. She was into some really freaky stuff. Like actually freaky scary, not sexy things, though I can't say she wasn't that either. She actually got cancer from working a case. Turns out that the number of people that get cancer from Aurora Wasteland fieldwork is freaky high. She was an amazing person. I wish she was still around." Maggie leaned over and placed her hand on top of Aurora's. "So, why do you want to help Nick?" "I don't know. I was at work like normal. I got a message from Nick, then my whole world fell apart. It all seemed to be linked to that message. Which, if I'm being honest, is so simple." Maggie released Aurora's hand, opened her laptop and spun it around for Aurora to see. The message from Nick was open. "I'm supposed to ask you about your afterlife." "What's your afterlife?" "Best I can tell, it's a startup trying to connect people to loved ones who have died. They claim to have a magical technology that actually works, but it sounds just like a psychic to me. Just a bunch of snake oil salesmen." "Listen." This time Aurora put her hand on top of Maggie's. "This world we live in is vastly understood. People think they understand it all, but they don't. I see a lot of strange and weird in my line of work. Some real, some fake, some world-altering. I wouldn't put it past the company to have actually cracked the code to the afterlife." "There's an afterlife? Like a real one?" Aurora laughed. "Fuck if I know, but there could be. So how can I help you with Nick? You seem hell-bent on figuring all this out. I have resources and access to information that can potentially help. What do you need from me?" Maggie tapped her laptop screen. A login prompt appeared. "I'm nervous to log into work. I think that's how they found me at the hospital." "Okay, we may have to get a hotel room." "What?" Maggie sputtered, almost spitting out her coffee. "Not like that. Not only like that. It's a safe place. We can go. We just..." A chair dropped down hard next to Maggie, interrupting the conversation. Both women turned to see a man plop in the chair and cozy up to Maggie. "Hey, Magpie," the man said. "Jerry?" Maggie said as she pulled her hand from Aurora's and clutched her laptop to her chest. How are you here? How did you find me? How are you alive? Are you one of them? Were you always one of them? Jerry laughed as he adjusted a loose piece of Maggie's hair and tucked it behind her ear. Came back like always. Tracked your phone. It's complicated. Yes, but what is a them, really? And yes, I always was. Aurora watched as tears welled up in Maggie's eyes. Had the man just admitted to lying their whole relationship? Aurora's phone buzzed again in her pocket. She ignored it. I'm not sure who you are, Jerry said, acknowledging Aurora for the first time, but Magpie and I have some catching up to do, so if you and your embarrassing cleavage could go, that would be splendid. Thanks. Maggie opened her mouth to speak, but Jerry put his finger over her lips to silence her. Just wait till we're alone, Magpie, then you can tell me everything. Aurora got to her feet, adjusted her clothes, and smiled at Maggie, who gave her a confused look, like she might actually believe that Aurora would leave her here with him. She really was so innocent in all of this. Aurora would have to go easy on her when it was all over. Jerry gave Aurora a smile, vaguer than the one Aurora had attempted in the bathroom, then waved goodbye to her. Aurora smiled back and leaned in, grabbed Jerry, and kissed him. As far as kisses went, Aurora had kissed a lot of people in her life. Some for work, some for pleasure, others for tax reasons, but Jerry had to be one of the worst. He seemed to think teeth had to be involved somehow, as if clinking teeth together was sexy. In an instant, Aurora pitied Maggie for having to kiss this man all these years. Then she cringed at the thought of how bad he must be going downstairs on a woman. Teeth and lady parts don't mix well unless you want them to. Maggie said something in the background, but it was lost on Aurora. She released the kiss and Jerry. Let's go, Aurora said, as she motioned for Maggie to join her. No, Jerry said, grabbing Maggie's hand. Maggie is staying with... Listen, Jerbear, Maggie is coming with me, and you're about to melt. So it would be best if you don't get any of that black goo you're about to melt into on my clothes, or perfectly accented cleavage. Maggie laughed as Aurora pulled her away from Jerry and towards the coffee shop door. Is he really going to melt? Maggie laughed as Jerry's screams echoed around the coffee shop. As they got to the door, Maggie glanced back. Jerry seemed to be melting from his lips. Chunks of black goo dripped from him onto the floor. You ready for that hotel room? Aurora asked as the two women left the coffee shop, hand in hand.
257. 257.
B. Every step sent needles of pain into Nick's arm. Running wasn't normally his thing. His fully formed beer gut had attested to this. Running with a broken arm? Fuck. He thought about killing himself right then and there. What if the guy who had offered to kill him had been right? Would his arm be fixed? That is what happened to video game characters. The thought lasted only a few seconds in Nick's brain between painful steps, caused by their sprint away from whoever was coming to get them. Nick never did get more information than that. The three of them, Nick, the man who'd come running towards them, and Lime, sprinted out of the cafeteria-looking area and out into an office building-looking hallway. Person after person gave them a strange look as they sprinted past. The building they were in must have been massive. Most office buildings could be crossed from end to end in 30 seconds, but they'd been going on over a few minutes and there was no end in sight. Eventually, Nick's lungs gave out and he toppled over. Lime grabbed his good arm and helped him to his feet. We can't stop. If they catch us, things will be unpleasant for you. They're pretty unpleasant already, Nick panted. He could feel his heart pulsing in his arm like lava. He needs a break, the man said. This isn't kindergarten. There's no recess and timeouts, Lime replied as she pulled Nick along. He's dead weight. We're not going to outrun them like this. We're not leaving him, Lime said, as she released Nick's arm, causing him to drop to the floor. Nick rested his back against the wall. I'd prefer both options. Don't leave me, and I need a rest. I'm not suggesting we leave him, the man said. We need to hide. They had this place locked down before. Now, with him out, they'll be losing their shit. They don't know who he is. They might, Nick said as he tried to adjust his broken arm to look less broken. I might have told them I was here to find Lemon. Well, that was dumb. What is your brain, just a bag of pureed dicks? What's wrong with you? The man said. Nick stared at the two of them as they argued and continued to berate him. He had no idea who these people were. Did they actually know Lemon? Was the girl, Lime, really her co-op? Whatever that meant. He didn't even know the guy's name. The pain in his arm spiked again. Nick slid down the wall further. He wished Lemon was here. He'd do anything just to hold her hand again. Lemon died, Nick blurted out. Both Lime and the guy who told them to run stopped arguing and stared at Nick. She was my everything, and she was taken from me. It wasn't fair. I know life isn't fair, but that felt like a kick in the balls. Then somehow I ended up here, and I found out she might be alive, wherever here is. And it's really fucking with my emotions. To know she's here and not be able to be with her, It's almost worse than losing her in the first place. It's okay, Nick, Lime said as she knelt down beside him. I get it. This is all weird, but we're going to get you to Lemon. Why are you doing this? Because you're the key, Nick. Lemon made you the key. We need you as much as you need her. Now let us get you out of here. We have a plan. A plan, Nick said as he sat himself up a little bit. As long as it doesn't involve running. It doesn't, the man, who Nick still didn't know his name, said. He knelt down as well. We're just going to cut your head off to sneak it past security. What's your name? Nick asked. Baker, the man replied, giving Nick a sympathetic look. Don't worry, I'll make it hurt as little as possible. Plus, okay, Baker, first, that's a terrible plan. And you need to work on your delivery of terrible plans. Second, are we in a video game? Both Lime and Baker snickered. Oh, Nick, Lemon told us you had dry humor, but it really is. Baker's head exploded. The insides of his head splattered across Nick's face. Less than a second later, Lime's head exploded too, though most of her head splattered onto the carpet. Both of their bodies sagged to the floor. Nick stared at both of them, confused as to what he just witnessed. Don't bother running, Nick, a voice said seemingly from nowhere. I wasn't about to, Nick yelled to no one in particular. If you could just hold still for a second, that would be great. Why? Nick said, unsure if he should be trusting the voice. Then, like Lime and Baker, Nick's head exploded. The crisp bed sheets stuck to Nick's face as he lifted his head. A thick, ropey strand of drool connected him to it like an umbilical cord connection. He swatted it away with his arm that had been broken. He moved his fingers and hand. His arm seemed to be back to normal. He sat up and realized he was back in the hotel room. It took a few seconds for his eyes to focus and his brain to clear. Hey, Nick, a woman said, startling him. He'd never woken up with someone in his room before. Nick spun around to see the woman in the red dress and Remy sitting at the foot of his bed. We need to talk, Remy said as he adjusted his tie. About your message.
257.
Hey. The light from around the bathroom mirror gave a glow to Aurora's face. She half smiled and bit her lip. Today had gone better than she'd hoped. Her phone buzzed on the bathroom countertop. She reached over to silence it, but instead let it vibrate in her hand. She stared at the caller ID, then clicked the answer icon on the screen. Do you have that red dress on? Aurora asked, still biting her lip. Is that how you answer your phone? The woman on the other end said. And you know I always do. Have it on, that is. Did you get him? Not exactly. There were complications, but he's back safe with us now. How do you always take the more difficult path? The woman laughed. Oh, you enjoy it. What do you have on, by the way? Let me guess. You're with a woman, so flannel? Her profile said she preferred it. You look like her video game character, correct? This time Aurora laughed. Wow. You did your research, but currently I have on very little. Sounds like it's going very well then. It is. Aurora's phone buzzed. She pulled it from her ear to check the caller ID, and by no surprise, it was the number that had been calling her all day. I gotta go. Thanks for calling. Anytime, the woman said. Then the line went dead. Aurora declined the incoming call and tried to tuck it into her pants pocket, only to remember she didn't have pants on, and the panties she did have on didn't have pockets large enough for the phone to fit in. She laughed, adjusted her boobs in the mirror. The bra she'd picked really did make them look great. Then she left the bathroom behind and went to rejoin Maggie in the hotel room. The transfer is done, Maggie said as she sat on the edge of the bed, her level of clothing matching Aurora's. So, I have to ask, this hotel, how do you know about it? I use it for work from time to time, Aurora said as she sat down next to Maggie and put her hand on Maggie's leg. Why? Well, I know you said the hotel has like a VPN or something set up to make it so that no one can track what we do here. What kind of hotel does that? The expensive, not advertised on Expedia kind. Does that bother you? No, it's just... What? Aurora asked as she ran her hand through Maggie's hair. This hotel, it looks just like the one from the video game. The more I think about it, so did the hotel lobby in the hallway. They all match Elysium. Does that bother you? No, it's just... Do you think Lemon based the game off this hotel? I think it's safe to say yes. What would she be doing here? Lemon worked a lot of Aurora Wasteland cases. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that she'd end up here. We all do at some point. You said the transfer was complete? Yes, Maggie said as she ran her fingers along the lines of Aurora's underwear. I transferred my work account to the game console here in the room. What kind of hotel offers a game console in room? Wait, don't tell me. The expensive kind. Anyways, my work account gives me access to a lot more areas of the game, plus a crap ton of player metrics, and other... I can find Nick. Probably. You sure he wants to be found? Aurora said as she ran a finger along Maggie's lip. What did the message say? I'm supposed to ask you about your afterlife? Have you called them? Your afterlife? Yeah, Aurora said as she leaned in to kiss Maggie. You think I should? Maggie said as her fingers ran over Aurora's body. I do. Something on Maggie's screen caught her attention. There was a notification in-game. Nick had just logged on. Aurora hadn't noticed they were friends in-game, but Maggie must have added him. He's online. Call the afterlife place, Aurora said as she felt her own phone vibrating next to her. Tell them about Nick. Okay, Maggie said as she got to her feet, got her pants from the floor and fumbled for her cell phone. She smiled at Aurora, who smiled back, then started dialing. Aurora stared at her phone, shrugged, and answered it. Is it done? The voice asked. She's trying to save him. She found them and is talking with Simon now. Good, but hey, I gotta say, I don't enjoy being killed. No one does. You might. The voice paused. Dying by shitting myself to death? That was low. You didn't pay me to half-ass it. No, I guess I didn't. I know the message, Aurora said as she looked over at Maggie. She looked gorgeous in the little clothes that she had on. The whole day had led up to this, gaining her trust, helping her with her boss and her boyfriend, being there to support her at the hospital, looking like her game character, all of it planned, exactly to get her here, like this, with Maggie. Finally, Munn said. Now, what did that little dick say?
257. 257.
Hey, my name is VaughnAshby. I wrote this. If you liked what you heard, head on over to VaughnAshby.com/free and pick up a free novel or a bunch of other free stuff. Go explore the Aurora Wasteland yourself at AuroraWasteland.com. Don't forget to check out the Stories from the Wasteland podcast and search for VaughnAshby on YouTube for video versions and other exciting videos. Thanks for listening.